No.1 versus No.2. I know this video is being released before the college football playoff rankings are, but it's AP No.1 versus AP tied No.2. It still counts as a 1 versus 2 matchup. We haven't seen this since LSU and Alabama matched up in Tuscaloosa in 2019, which was again in SEC country. There's this guy called Kirby Smart who coaches Georgia, this guy named Hendon Hooker who is one of the Heisman frontrunners. He plays quarterback for Tennessee, you might have heard him. And these two characters, along with Josh Heupel, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman for Tennessee, Todd Monken, Glenn Schumann, Stetson Bennett, Kendall Milton, Brock Bowers for Georgia, and many others. A vast amount of talent, many of which we will see in the NFL. Great coaching staffs. Just tons of talent, passion. It's what college football is all about, and that's what this matchup here is all about. I normally cover Big Ten teams. I'm a Big Ten centered channel, but this is a No.1 versus No.2 matchup. I can't resist but get my hands on it and talk about it, and that's what we're going to be doing today. No.2 Tennessee travels to Athens, Georgia, to Sanford Stadium with a crowd capacity of 92,746 Georgia Bulldog fans. They travel to Sanford and will take on No.1 Georgia, who was No.1 last year at the end of the year and were the unanimous national champions. Both teams sit at 8-0. Tennessee's 4-0 in conference. Georgia is 5-0 in conference. Tennessee has by far the nation's No.1 strength of record entering this game. Georgia is consensus No.1 according to most analysts in the country. And Georgia is one of the most raw talented teams. They're No.2 according to the 24/7 Sports team talent composite. So I'm excited for this game. I think anyone should be excited for it. Anyone who watches college football, whether they're just a casual passerby fan, whether they're a fan who pays attention to it and watches every game that they can get their hands on Saturday, whether they're a player of another team, a coach of another team, which maybe they won't watch it. Most are focused on their own team, and that's their own business. Good for them. But the game of the century, which is what you call a No.1 versus No.2 matchup, is upon us. As a Michigan fan, I'm hoping that whoever wins this game goes on to lose one random game in the regular season so that Michigan and Ohio State can match up as No.1 versus No.2. I'll put that right out there. Michigan fan, I'm looking forward to what I think should be the game of the century when Ohio State and Michigan match up each other in Columbus, which I also think will be an undefeated matchup. So this year in college football, it's a year of chaos, much like last year. There are, I think, a lot of good teams as well. Georgia, Tennessee, Michigan, Ohio State, they all look like playoff teams. Alabama, if they get their act together, they can look like a playoff team. TCU is just finding ways to win with their offense. What a year in college football, and just what a season. What a month in October. Tennessee conquering Alabama. Georgia, they survived Missouri. They survived Kent State. They themselves just beat down Florida after Florida came back and in the third quarter closed it within 8. And then Georgia and Kirby Smart just said, nope, defense and efficiency. And they put Florida away. Before we get to previewing this game, I just want for 30 seconds to encourage you all to check out my merchandise store. It's nice, high-quality clothing. I will tell you that you do not want to heat dry this. The logo will eventually wear off, but you can wash it. It'll be perfectly safe. They're very comfortable, high quality. I own a sweatshirt, and I'm going to get a t-shirt, probably a Michigan branded t-shirt. There are only Big Ten branded t-shirts and the white and black t-shirt varieties, but just check out check out the page, do me a solid, and before we go any further, please like this video so it can circulate around the algorithm, subscribe to this channel so we can grow this community to more than just mostly Big Ten fan bases, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you can get notified when I go live and talk about all of college football. Let's get right into it. Georgia and Tennessee. The game takes place at 3:30 Eastern Time, and it will air on CBS. Georgia is given a 75% chance to win, according to ESPN's FPI and analytics. And the Bulldogs, at the time of recording this video, I imagine the spread will change since it is early in the week. They're favored by 8.5 points. Georgia is minus 305 money line to win. Tennessee plus 240 to win. And the over-under is 65.5. Let me talk about some quick statistics, most important points per game and points allowed per game. You can allow 600 yards on your defense, and if you have a good scoring defense, those yards may matter when it comes to determining future matchups, but in theory, they're not nearly as important as, holding opponents to small amounts of points. At the end of the day, like Paul Chryst, the former coach of Wisconsin, said, and I'm paraphrasing this, all that matters is that you just score more points than your opponent. It's just that simple. Tennessee scores 49.4 points per game. I think it's the number 1 or number 2 scoring offense in the country. I think they're number 1, and they just surpassed Ohio State after this past week. Their defense allows 21 points flat per game. Georgia scores 41.8 points per game. Their defense allows 10.5 points per game. They have a top 4 scoring defense. I think they're only behind Illinois and Michigan, maybe one other team. I'm pretty confident they're number 3 in scoring defense. So an elite offense in Tennessee going up an elite defense against Georgia. But Georgia's offense, 41.5 points per game. Georgia's offense is top 10 in efficiency. They're the 7th most efficient offense, the number 1 most efficient defense. Tennessee's offense is 3rd most efficient. Their defense, however, is 37th in efficiency. They allow nearly 400 yards on defense, 300 passing yards, but less than 100 rushing yards. What they did against Alabama that I liked is they did limit Alabama's run game, and they themselves could run against Alabama's fierce front 7. So Tennessee, that offense, and Georgia's defense, that's going to be the ultimate matchup. I give Georgia the edge at staff mainly due to Kirby Smart, but also due to Todd Monken, Glenn Schumann, and Will Muschamp, the coordinators. That's one of the best staffs in the country. Now, Josh Heupel, Alex Golesh, the offensive coordinator, and Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator for Tennessee, that's a good staff as well. Do not get me wrong. What they've done over the course of 2 years at Tennessee is very impressive. At quarterback, I got to give it to Hendon Hooker over Stetson Bennett. Both are top 10 in QBR. Stetson Bennett and Hendon Hooker they're good quarterbacks. I'd put Hendon in the category of elite. I would put Bennett in the category of good, which is still very impressive given the fact that he started as a walk-on, and he helped Georgia win their national championship last year. At running back, Georgia and Tennessee both have good running backs, but Georgia just by a mile has more depth. Their running back rotation is crazy, and combining that with their offensive line, which should be in the running for one of the best in the nation, they definitely have the better rushing attack. Wide receiver. This is an interesting story. So Cedric Tillman for Tennessee got hurt early in the season. He came back against Kentucky, but he only had like 22 receiving yards. Jalen Hyatt, talk about a story, came out of nowhere against Alabama and got 5 touchdowns, had 207 yards receiving on 6 receptions. Against University Tennessee Martin and Kentucky, he had a combined 312 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. So wide receiver with Hyatt, with Tillman, with Brew McCoy, one of the best wide receiver cores, maybe the best wide receiver core in the country. Where Georgia's strength in the receiving game lies is Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, along with Darnell Washington, along with Eric Gilbert, and Brock Bowers especially, best tight end in the country. 547 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns, 17.6 yards per reception, which is insane for a tight end. He also has 82 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns on 3 attempts with a long of 75. 6'4", 230 pounds, one of the best tight ends, if not the best tight end in the nation. That's Georgia's strength on offense. Defense, all Georgia here. Special teams, Tennessee has a top 20 special teams unit in efficiency. Georgia's is just top 50. But Georgia's defense, they're top 4, top 3 in scoring. They allow less than 90 rushing yards per game. They have talent everywhere. It seems like Nolan Smith is going to be out at linebacker, which is unfortunate, but Georgia can, with the 5-star talent they have on defense, they can just plug and play. Not even kidding you. Glenn Schumann and Will Muschamp will find someone to fill Nolan Smith's spot. That's not saying he's expendable by any means. Very fantastic player. 5-star at a high school, NFL level talent. But Georgia's defense and what Kirby Smart, what they do there, how they run their system on defense it's crazy. One of the best defenses in, over the course of several years, Kirby Smart has consistently had some of the best defenses in the country. Georgia's ranked number 3 in ESPN's FPI. Tennessee is ranked number 5. Both of these teams are unanimous. They're unanimous top 5 teams. Whether it's by efficiency metrics, what analysts think, by power ranking scores, the only thing that wouldn't indicate that would be Tennessee's total team talent by 24/7 Sports, which is 19th. Georgia's the second most talented team. That's the greatest disparity here. I won't even say home field advantage is the greatest disparity here, or the coaching staffs. I'm not going to. Tennessee's OC along with Georgia's OCs are consistently some of the best OCs right now. What they've done, Todd Monken at Georgia, his career in the NFL, head coach of Southern Miss, Golish, what he's done at UCF, pretty fantastic along with what he's done at Tennessee. It's just great offenses, and Tennessee's defense has improved as well. Georgia's has taken a slight step back from last year's legendary unit, but it's still much better than Tennessee's. The greatest disparity here is total talent. That's my belief. And then home field advantage would probably come in second. Defensive performance would come in third, honestly. Georgia having home field advantage and having much more talent and just having a more solid foundation as a program and better recruiting is really the greatest disparity here. But both teams are efficient. They're well coached. They're disciplined. Georgia honestly is more of the traditional football team, more defensively focused, but this year their offense has taken a form amongst its own. Their offense has looked one of the best offenses that Kirby Smart's ever had, maybe the best. The difference is Tennessee, to me, I can say this as a Big Ten fan, Tennessee reminds me a lot of last year's Ohio State team. Near carbon copy. The difference is on defense, Tennessee's weakness is the secondary, whereas last year Ohio State's true weakness was in defending the run. But Tennessee, very fast, very explosive. Georgia, they like to control the game more, but they can still, with Brock Bowers and Stetson Bennett, he's good with his deep balls. They can be explosive as well, and they can punch you back and get you down and bury you quickly in the dirt. I think both quarterbacks are the players to watch here. I think quarterback Stetson Bennett and Hendon Hooker, whoever has the better passing game wins, because that, I believe, is where the weakness in both of these defense lies, in my opinion. I think for Georgia, weakness is secondary. It's the same thing with Tennessee. Tennessee's secondary is worse than Georgia's, obviously, but Tennessee's passing game, I would argue, is significantly better than Georgia's passing game. Not that Georgia's passing game is bad. It's very good. Hendon Hooker and his wide receivers, that combined makes one of the best passing attacks in the country. So I think whoever passes the ball, whoever's the better quarterback, and believe me, there's more pressure on Hendon Hooker to be the better quarterback than Stetson Bennett. Because Stetson Bennett overall, with his defense, with his offensive line, has the better supporting cast. There's more pressure on Hendon Hooker to outperform Stetson Bennett than there is the other way around. But if Stetson Bennett has an off game, if he's slow, if he has a 1-to-1 TD-INT ratio and completes around 50% of his passes, I would not take Tennessee to win. If Hendon Hooker gets pressured out of his mind, gets sacked a few times, can't really effectively scramble, then I wouldn't take Tennessee to win either. So offensive line play, because offensive line play is what's really important, helps determine how the QBs play by a mile, and QB play are very important to determine the winner here. Let's talk about these two statistically and then move on to my prediction. Stetson Bennett is 13th in the nation in passing yards, 82nd, though, in passing touchdowns. He's thrown for 2,349 yards, 9 passing touchdowns, 3 passing interceptions, has a QBR of 84.1, a passer rating of 150.6. He also has 117 rushing yards on the ground and 5 rushing touchdowns. Hendon Hooker has thrown for 2,338 yards. He's 15th, so he's actually behind Stetson Bennett in total passing yards. He's tied for 12th in passing touchdowns, though, with 21. He's only thrown 1 pick, which is tied for second in the nation, and he also is second in the nation QBR with a 91.2, a passer rating of 191.6. He has 338 rushing yards, 4.6 yards per carry, and 4 rushing touchdowns. So just statistics, some statistics for both quarterbacks right there. And at the end of the day, Georgia's favored. I will admit here, logically, statistically, home field advantage, what history has shown, talent advantage, Georgia. That's where logic mostly falls. But in college football, the most talented team doesn't always win, and matchups matter a lot. And hey, I might be wrong here. I'm not going to say that, statistics led me astray, or if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And it's just a prediction. But here's where I stand. Tennessee is all about starting quick. Like, for my Michigan Wolverines. Michigan, people say they're one of the quickest starting teams in college football. And I disagree with that. I think that's nitpicking statistics because Michigan might have an explosive play in the first half, but where Michigan really gets you, in the Penn State game and Michigan State game, the Indiana game, every game Michigan's played has shown you that they beat you and they break you in the second half. Georgia reminds me of that team. Georgia honestly reminds me of, like, this year's Georgia and this year's Michigan team remind me a lot of each other in a broad sense. Now, obviously, you go more specific, and there are a whole lot of differences. But Tennessee likes to start fast. They get up on you quick, and they sort of peter out in the second half, and we saw this against Alabama. Unlike some teams, though, who get up on you early but then peter out, they can reemerge and they can punch you right back. Georgia's offense, I think, will be efficient in the red zone. The Georgia offense will not. I don't think they'll be the problem here because their offense is efficient, their offense is more experienced than their defense, and I would say, I don't know. I just think that Tennessee, you look at it, and it's not, I don't know, I do know, Tennessee doesn't have a good defense. And Georgia's been more of a passing team this year than they have been any other year under Kirby Smart, and they're facing one of statistically the worst secondaries in the country. But I think the Bulldogs secondary is what's going to struggle, and I think Tennessee's passing attack will shine. Georgia has been a team that, against Missouri, against Kent State, they've struggled. Against Florida, they had an iffy third quarter. Tennessee has been the hotter team. Tennessee, I think, is coming in with more momentum, and it helps Georgia that they have the home field advantage because if this game was in Neyland Stadium, I think it would be a very hard game for Georgia to win. But that was last year when Tennessee Tennessee got up early on Georgia last year, and Georgia extinguished that fire. This Tennessee team is much more explosive on offense. Their defense is much better. They're more efficient. They're more confident. They have bigger goals in front of them, and I think that will lead them to come into Athens and win. And I think for Tennessee, their defense, for all the points it allows, and for how mediocre or just above average it is, they're going to get one clutch turnover. Because if Georgia's defense allows this many points, which is a bold prediction in itself, Stetson Bennett isn't built to engage in shootouts. And I think that and Tennessee's defense improving from last year will result in Tennessee's defense getting one clutch turnover, likely to seal the deal. But I think it's going to be a great game. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, Georgia's favored to win every 3 out of 4 simulations for a reason, because Georgia has more talent. Georgia has the better head coach. So if Georgia wins, I won't be surprised at all, and you're completely logical if you disagree with me. The key for each team to win, I think, is Georgia must start fast in order to win. They have to keep pace. If they start fast and Tennessee starts fast, Georgia has more endurance, they have more raw talent, the crowd will be for them, and they'll eventually wear Tennessee down. Tennessee must play hard all 4 quarters. Now, if both teams do these things, this will be a very entertaining game. Like if both start fast, play hard 4 quarters, this will be the game of the year. Maybe the game of the century in the literal sense, like this is the best game of the 21st century. Or something close to it, like the 2017 Rose Bowl, which Georgia won in a high-scoring affair in overtime. So that's my prediction, 45-42, Volunteers win in Athens. And that's all I have to say for this video. If you liked it, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down below. Please subscribe, as I have a goal of reaching 10,000 subs by the end of the season. It'd be awesome to get this community into the 5-figure numbers, and check out my merchandise channel in the link down below if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.